Okay, I'm share my screen. I guess we're just waiting for Fanny and Nick to join.
Right.
In terms of I want to follow up on the error handling conversation. So I reviewed the format of the files that coming back from calls when we try to import the file into OCC. I think we should be able to easily parse it because there are two responses that coming back. One is essentially list of the URLs to the JSON format file. Essentially, JSON format will include details about the errors. And then the second file, the failed file, will contain all the failed records, essentially record ID and the information about the record fail, which will be exactly the same format that the file has been loaded into the OCC. So I think that should be helpful for us to kind of build that scenario on the SOA side, like orchestration that make a second call once the file is imported to the OCC. Then second call goes to pull the report back and check for any errors while parsing the file and then updating records on the temp table.
Hi, good morning. Fanny here.
Hey, Fanny.
Hey, Fanny.
Good morning, it's Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, regarding the batch approach, this seems to be specific to OCC. Say we wanted the data to be imported to Salesforce, then we need to follow a different approach.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well overnight. It sort of crossed my mind that we don't want to lock it down too tightly directly to the OCC process.
Yeah, well, yes and no, honestly. I was having some discussions with our internal SOA developer because he's been looking into some of the Salesforce interfaces. And the thing with Salesforce is that just as OCC, there are two approaches to doing interfaces. There's the SOAP APIs that are used to do like small number of records where you send a query, you get a response. And then there's the batching process, which is really similar to what happens with OCC in the sense that you create batches and then you submit batches. And then you have a success response and a failure response that you can capture back. But the batching process itself is kind of I find it's very specific. I mean, we could have a single staging table if we ever needed information that's common, but the process to upload it and to capture the information back is very specific. And even the way that the batches are submitted. So for example, for Salesforce, you don't just submit batches. You actually you first send a first service API call to create a job, and then you add batches under the job. And once you're finished adding batches, you close the job saying, I'm done uploading batches. And then it's going to start processing in parallel.
Okay.
So for Salesforce, the process, if we use the bulk API, for thousands of records, you don't really have a choice but to use the bulk API. You fall into the very specific of the APIs that are available to do the transfer of the data in batch mode to the endpoint.
Yeah, I mean, steps will definitely be different. And if you look at the OCC, for example, right, so there's also a multi-step approach. So the first call will be to upload the file. The second call will be to trigger the import process. And the third call is to get status back. Yeah.
And the other point that's going to be different also is obviously the mapping to the endpoint.
Right.
Because when you send a batch, you need to pre-map it to the exact, and you create a CSV with the, the column names of your endpoint,
Yep.
which are different from one system to another. I find the way they handle the foreign keys as well might be different.
Right, and in OCC, for example, I mean, the account ID and account name looks like they're using it as a composite key, which means that the account name or company name needs to be unique. If it's not, we need to probably append the ID to the name and then remove it from the front end display, for example, if the company name is not unique.
Right. Account name must be unique
Yeah.
in OCC?
Yep.
Oh,
Company name.
interesting.
Yeah, that's, I'm not sure why they have that. We were struggling with that in the previous project, but
Yeah.
looks like that's they have it as a composite key. So yeah, I don't know why, but it happens when you do the update. When you do the insert, it's not a big deal. I think it just inserts it and it takes it. But update, I think the system just uses that as a composite key. So if you have if you don't have account name, that works fine. But if you have account name, it actually uses the account name to update it. So we saw the
changes.
right. We saw scenarios that it was overriding different organization information if the name was the same name.
Because the name might change.
Yeah. But it has to be unique. So basically, from requirements on the OCC side, you have to have unique ID for the account, which could be EBS account number. And then company name or account name has to be unique. If it's not unique, you guys might have similar name for the company.
Yeah, honestly, it's not a concern because on the, when you go to the OCC admin, if you want to search an account at this point to add an account to a user, you can only search by account name.
Right.
So it's really not practical because we have many accounts that have duplicate names or very similar names. So I was already planning to add the account number - site number as a prefix to the account name.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So it's not so much of an issue from what I see.
Okay.
Might be made, no, it shouldn't be an issue. The only issue is if it uses that as the identifying key to do a record update, but the name might change. That's somewhat less practical.
Right.
Just to confirm whether that's an issue or not, because in the end, a company, if we use the account name and it's the ship to location name, for sure the number would not change, but the name might.
Right. As long as it's unique and we have mapped by ID, I don't believe that's going to cause any issues, but we'll definitely test it out and see if there's any scenarios that will duplicate the information.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. In terms of the email from Fanny, so Fanny, you want to walk us through this that you sent out?
I already responded.
Yes.
Can you confirm the question was, what about the other business purpose that are mapped in EBS?
Right. I just wanted to be sure. So it's only the ship to and the bill to what we wanted to extract. Right?
That's it. There's two other site use that we use, but they're not really in the scope of what we're doing for the MVP. So we'd ignore them for now.
Okay. All right. There's a few questions. If we can open the Excel mapping document.
Yeah, I have it open on my end. I can share if you want.
Okay, I'll just stop sharing.
So as per the mapping document, if we go to the bottom section, okay, this is this is where we last time we stopped discussing. So the addresses, whatever it is indicating, the location, the address 1+2, city, postal code. This is all representing the ship to, right? Ship to location address.
Yes, but also bill too.
Are we repeating that information
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
We'll see. I think in the staging table you can have it repeated for build 2 and ship 2. Yeah. Just
Okay.
like I did for the query.
I thought like I would give an information first ship to, and in the same record I would also give the record which is associated the build to with the ship to as additional columns. But
Yes, this is what I did in my
I think
simple query.
yeah, but in the mapping document it doesn't shows an additional columns for the build to separately, right? Like we are saying instead of that, like we are from the mapping document point, it would be 2 records.
Yes, that's it. So I mean, I could repeat that for build 2 and ship 2 if we want to make it clearer.
Right. I think it would be more
I'll say
for you to link, right? So okay.
Yeah, I can do it like this. In the end, the contract we won't need it duplicated. It's really more that doesn't matter.
Sure.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, okay. And default. Okay. So I'll bring that associated record with it, and the next was what exact value is expected in the default shipping or default billing address?
Okay, that's the logic that I had here. Because in the end, we might create 1 or 2 address records on the OCC side. It will depend. Because if a single site has, like if a single site number has both build 2 and ship 2 purpose on the same site, we're going to create 1 address with both default billing and default shipping.
Okay, so expected value would be yes or y, or what we are expecting?
That's what I'm saying here is, if you look at this here, it's an additional processing really that has to happen. But if both address have the same site number, then you put yes on both. And if they're different, then the ship 2 would be default ship 2 and the other one would be default build 2. Yeah, the tricky part is not, I think, to map this out. Yeah, I think I'll do, here's what I do, is I'll do always default shipping because it's always default shipping. And this one, where it's default billing, will say if the ship to site number equals the build to,
then we wanted to make it
number, then default. So maybe Alex could confirm what's the exact value that you need to pass for a checkbox.
Checkbox says it's Boolean on OCC side.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could be true or false, right?
So just true or like
false. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm working on the mapping on OCC side, so you guys will have that mapping by end of day tomorrow.
Okay. It's more to know. How, because on the end we can either put it, let's say yes, no, or we can say 1 or 0, or we could say yes or null. So I just want to say what value should we have in the staging table so that it can be picked up by OCC.
Right.
Okay. I mean, now this is clear. The second question was, now there are 2 tabs, right? So what we were considering is, since it's pretty much the same structure for the primary account and sub accounts, we probably wanted to populate in the same table. Can you go to the next tab? Then next tab, EBS account to primary account.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the first three information, do we need to pass them?
Account ID would be the account number, if I recall. That's something we can pass. So we'll, I haven't updated after our discussion, but yeah. Account ID description, I don't think. I mean,
This is an OCC, right? I mean, okay,
Yeah,
account ID.
Well, account ID is the OCC field. So we would pass the account number in the account ID.
Well,
The description on, I don't know, I don't think we'll use it. The account name would be the concatenation of account number and account name.
From the detail, right? From the account name. Okay, what should be the account name? Because the account name is very big. I mean, it was concatenating the site details and everything.
No, not for the primary accounts. Let me just open OCC.
When we say site numbers, there would be a lot of site numbers which are associated with that.
Okay, no, that was a copy paste from the account, the sub account. This is the primary account. It's just account number. No worries about the sub accounts or the sites on this one. This one is just the account information. Sorry about this.
Okay. So there is no concatenation which would be required, right? Then
No.
okay, it would be just account number.
Yeah.
Okay. Status. Status. Does it have to be active, or is it have to be A? Or it has to be active, right?
Yeah, it must be active.
Okay. Okay.
Well, actually, status is not always active. The reason for this is, let's say an account gets deactivated, we need to update the target record as inactive.
Right. So if it is A, from the backend in the Oracle tables, if it is active, it would the backend record would return A. So if it is A, then it's active, or else it would be inactive. What I would return.
Yeah, we'll need to make a conversion of sorts. And if it's A, it could become true, and if it's anything else than A, it would become false. I don't know. Is it something that we would do, that we would translate on the SOA side, or something we would do in the EBS side?
We can do it that in the EBS side. So if we check it out in the detail one, in the subcontract, we are already doing that. But we say if account and account, if it both are active, then we are making that as an active. We are returning that as an active. So.
Okay.
Instead of true and false, should I return the same way as we are doing for a sub account?
Yeah, we'll have the same for the sub account. Yes. Status.
So Boolean would be easy at OCC side to recognize?
Yeah, I think it's more on the OCC side that it's actually Boolean.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need. Honestly, I don't know how it's going to translate. I mean, can we pass a text string that's going to say true? I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, I can return anything so what is the value?
Yeah, but so that's something Alex could confirm you more than I, honestly.
Yeah, it's one true or false. Yeah.
All right, I think for now I'm okay. I mean, after yesterday call, I was talking to SOA team. We were trying to explore like what would be the best way to communicate that. Is would be the business event or is would be the I think the most easy or suggested way from the OCC team was to from an AQ. So once we have populated all the details, then communicate that populating the value in a AQ, where that would be picked by the SOVA and then it would be processed accordingly. So um, uh, to create an AQs, probably I would need a help of the DBA. We would provide the scripts and then we did these things before. So I can provide the scripts to the DBA where DBA can provide the
So how do you call this, the thing you want to create? An AQ?
AQ, advanced queues, Oracle advanced queues.
And is that something to do with the concurrent managers?
Not the concurrent managers, but from an sysadmin responsibility, just like an app schema, DB would have an schema called user access like sys or sysadmin system.
Okay.
So that's the only way they would be able to create AQs. So once the AQ is created, then we can use from a different schema directly. The populating and all these things can be done from the different schema. But for the first time, for the creation of an AQ, we need help to execute those scripts from the sys.
So just to be clear, what would the AQ let you do that you couldn't do otherwise?
Advanced queues is more like kind of it's more like queues, like you would have a record get populated there and it would stay there. And then SOVA, when the moment it processed, then it would be cleared from that particular queues. So, the request, whatever the communication request, that SOVA would be always looking from that AQ. The moment it sees there is anything in the AQ, it sees that okay, what is the batch ID and all that, it would be able to process the request from there.
So it's a sort of table then?
Yeah, we can say like it's kind of in a table, but say like if say for example, if for some reason it got disconnected or the connection has not been established or something which has happened between the EBS to SOVA, but still the record going to be there. And once the record is processed, it automatically get cleared from there.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like JMS, like persistent storage of the messages,
Wow.
where
So
the
this
message
is
can be picked up.
so this is the enterprise messaging solution by Oracle
Right.
to be similar to the JMS or the IBM MQ.
Okay. That's interesting.
So
Is that this?
even if
one?
you use
Yeah,
Advanced queuing?
yeah, advanced queuing is the SOVA.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of really cool.
Yeah. So
Okay, and when you say it's consumed, do you need to re-update that back, or as soon as it's how would the queue know that it's been processed?
So the SOA will have the AQ adapter, and it will be polling at the queue to receive a message. As soon as there is a message posted by the EBS, that message will be consumed, and then SOA will retrieve the data from the staging table and upload to OCC, and then the message in the queue will be deleted.
Okay. And there's no existing queues that we could leverage. It's really because we have a specific data set, we need to have our own AQ created.
Yeah, I mean, the existing AQs would have their different purposes. We would not be able to use them.
Right. Right. I understand.
We should have the dedicated one for the one like what we are using for this.
So we may need to have one AQ for each one of them, say contact, site, and other entities.
And AQs, let's say there's an error on a specific record. Would we log the error on the AQs records that have errored out?
Yes, so we'll have two queues. We'll have two queues. One queue is a normal queue, and other is the error queue. If the message in the AQ could not be processed, it will be moved to the error queue after a few attempts.
Okay. And do we have any reporting on the error queue, or we have to create a custom report for this?
We'll have to. I mean, we'll have to create a custom report. If you want SOA to generate a report, we can do that.
Okay.
Just to be clear on this one, so what idea is like we create a custom table where we would be populating the data in the custom itself. But say, for example, we have populated about 1,000 records within a batch number 10. Now, in an AQ, what we are letting know is we say like the batch 10 is ready for the batch 10 is ready for the process. So SOA sees the batch 10 number from that particular record in a AQ, then it will see that batch 10 record would be extracted from the custom table, and then it would process from there. So if we may, I mean, in the custom table itself, where we would be maintaining the error message and error code and error message there, so that the reports, whatever we wanted to extract for that specific batch ID, we can extract it from the staging table or the custom table, not from.
So we would have both the staging table and the the advanced queue for sending the message.
Right. Advanced queues is only meant to, I mean, here we are limiting our scope just for advanced queues, just to meant for communication purpose. Like once we load all the data in the staging table, we just wanted to know SOA team that this specific batch ID records is ready in this particular staging table. So
it won't contain the actual data.
It doesn't have the actual data, but we can. There's no restrictions. We can, if we want, like we can do that advanced queues, even directly passing the data to.
So the advanced queue is only to generate an event, Ethan. It won't have the data. All the data will be in the staging table.
I see. Okay.
And funny, I don't think we have the concept of batches now.
It's a batch. It's still the number of records, whatever we are extracting.
I think the point is that there was a limitation on number of records that can be processed at once on the OCC side. So I don't know where the batching needs to happen. Maybe it can happen in SOA, or maybe we can pre-batch them on the ABS side. But Alex, you can confirm that there's a limitation on number of records that can be processed at once.
I don't think there's a limitation. No, it's basically double check on that, because we haven't had an issue with limitations in records. And Oracle doesn't really say what's the limit for the transaction.
But it's more on OCC side. Let's say we dump 10,000 record at once. Is it going to accept it?
It will. It might take just longer time to process. My recommendation would be maybe just break it apart, if possible.
Well, yeah, that was the reason about the batching.
It makes more sense to batch it across that way then. So if you do a full load of 130,000 or whatever the number's going to be for a full load, is OCPC just going to lock up and complain forever?
No, it will throw the exception. I mean, so when the process will run, basically will error out the records that could not process, and will generate the error log file that we can review after that process is done.
Yeah, and maybe just to confirm, we don't as we send the request, it's not going to process it right away. We just upload the file, and then it's going to trigger a processing locally on the server. And once it's completed, we can take the response, but it's not going to wait until the processing is complete. It just
Right.
Okay. And
One question. So I think there is limitation on the file size, not the amount of record, but the size itself. I think it's 5 megabytes. I think, but I'll double check.
okay. And one more point related to an extract. Say, for example, this would be a daily program, right? So, say, for example, in a yesterday run, it picked up 1,000 records, and we want only those 1,000 records to be processed, right? Say, for example, it's running from the last 10 days, and today I made an extract. How do the SOA know that these 1,000 records from the custom table has to be picked up? I mean, we still don't want it to clear the old records, right? Like, say, for example, yesterday, whatever the extract which has been happened, we want that to be still there in the custom table, so that if just in case if it got errored out, we wanted to know what records it has been failed, right?
Well, yeah, I think it goes back to what our discussions from yesterday, that SOA won't need the batch number, because if something errored up the day before or wasn't processed, it would just retake. Let's say SOA was offline on the previous day, whereas EBS was online and generated some staging records. So when it runs on the next day, it's just going to capture everything from the previous day and load those records from the previous day and from the current day, because it's just going to go back and see which records are not processed. And I guess it's just going to look at the queue. If you're using the advanced queue, it won't even look at the status. It's just going to look at, okay, what's in the queue, and pick up what's in the queue, right?
Yeah, if it is in queue, but in queue we are not going to have any data, right? So it's only meant to say that
SOA is going to look at the staging table and the status of the record. If the status is to be uploaded, then we upload it to OGC.
Honestly, I'm having a hard time figuring if it's going to read the staging table itself and see what's there to be picked up. I'm not sure what's the purpose of the queue then.
So the message in the queue lets SOA know that there is data in the staging table that needs to be submitted to OGC.
Oh, okay. So it's like a business event then, but it's not a business event. It's just to trigger. It's just to trigger SOA from starting its process.
Yeah. See, even if we have a business event, the business event has to publish a message in the queue. The business event is raised by eBusiness when a user adds, updates, or deletes a record, right?
Oh no,
you're not doing.
Okay, no, it's not. The way that we had been using the business event internally is we would raise. Let's say somebody runs the concurrent to stage the records. When it completes, it would raise a custom business event to trigger. Oh, the staging process has finished. Let's start the SOA processing. So it wasn't a business event like a seeded business event when, let's say, a sales order is created or an account is updated. It was more of a custom business event, just saying, oh, by the way, staging is completed, and then SOA picks up that event and starts its processing.
Yeah, so then we could have a business event, but the business event still needs to either write a message to the AQ or invoke the service, SOA service.
Yeah, I don't know whether we
Because the
actually
event
need it. If you do the advanced queuing, the concurrent program would just add something in the queue, and then SOA would pick it up without the business event.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like one or the other, either the business event or the queue.
Right. I mean, yeah. I think the purpose is same. It does the same. The purpose would be the same. Just to let know so that there is something in the staging table to process.
Oh, okay. Do you have a recommended approach, either business event or queue?
I mean, we have done in past with an advanced queue, but I mean, I'm just seeing that what would be the best and what would be the exactly. So I'll let you know by tomorrow.
Okay.
All the possibilities and see.
business event is more generic. It can invoke a web service. It can
Business event?
put a message in the queue.
Okay. All right. Let me just check that. Okay. I'll get back to you on that one. But back to that question, say, for example, I would say the records are running from the last 3 days, and there might be some few error records in past, and today there is an additional 1,000 records. So what we're saying is the error records, whatever we have, we would process them of the previous day, as well as the new 1,000 records, whatever been inserted today. Is that what we want?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So let me just do an example. So as an example, we'll just do 4 records for the sake of example. But let's say yesterday was 507. So that was yesterday. Oh, well, one thing we might be careful about is, yeah, okay. Let's start with this, and then we can discuss my other question. So let's say records updated, let's say account 1234, 1255, 1293, and 15. Well, okay, so 4 accounts, but SOA was down on the previous day. On the next date, and you have the status here. And then I'll do this. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do something like this, where this is the 6th. So SOA is down. So SOA didn't update the status on the previous day records, right? So they're still ready for upload. So when SOA runs on the staging table, it's going to look at any records that are ready for upload, would take those records, upload them, and then change the status to other process or error. Let's say our data error. So on the next date, it's not going to pick up any of the previous records, right?
Well, if it's a queue, are those records like if it's been processed, those records won't exist any longer, right?
No, but from what I understand, and Chandu could confirm, or Fanny, is the queue doesn't contain the exact records to be processed. It just raises a generic call for a specific process on the SOA side, right?
That's correct.
So it's just going to raise a single, let's say, queue message. Oh, OCC account load. That would be generic. And this would trigger SOA. to start processing, and so I would read those records. So the queue itself is I was understanding that it would contain, like, the message would be the actual state record to be staged. But from what I understand, the message could just be, hey, by the way, so can you start your processing? So with the queue wouldn't contain the exact records. It wouldn't have any account IDs. It would just be something, say, oh, by the way. And it's interesting because if SOA is down, the queue message won't be consumed. So when SOA comes back up, it is going to consume the queue message.
That's correct.
Okay, so if SOA is down for 3 hours, it might come back 3 hours later and see, oh, it's ready for consuming and then it would consume them, process them, flag them as processed. So the next day, those won't even be there to process because they would be already consumed. So we just have to be careful if what would happen is SOA is down and it comes back up at the same time as EBS, and we get 2 messages in the queue for the same processing. Would it start 2 process at the same time, or would it wait?
So the message there will be only one message in the queue, right?
Well, yeah.
So if there is one message in the queue, SOA will consume that message and start reading the staging table for whatever data that needs to be processed, and then submit to OCC.
Okay. So here in the message queue, I have a question here. So say SOA is down, right? So SOA is the one who's going to read the message from the AQ. Now SOA is down from the last 2 days, and from the EBS side, it is a 2 days job. I mean, it's a daily job. So yesterday it has processed some records in the staging table and kept 1 record in the AQ. And next day, it ran again as per the schedule. Then it populated 1 more record. So now it will have 2 records in a AQ. So by the time the SOA is up, there is 2 records in AQ. But primarily, it is only meant to any record in advanced queue. All I understand from discussion is it just to know there is some records existing. So the moment there is a record existing, it just goes there and try to see if there is any records to be processed from the table and process from that custom. It doesn't know what batch ID or what specific records to be processed. It would just pick it up any records, whatever it is available in the staging table.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, from what I understand from Chandu, if let's say your concurrent completes and it's ready to create the message in the queue, if there already is a message in the queue, you wouldn't add a new one because you only need 1. Or, yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. Or could we include the batch ID in the queue?
I can do that.
You can do that, and so I could just process that queue so that 1 queue message would be for a specific batch. So there wouldn't be any risk of having multiple, I don't know, just some thoughts.
Yeah.
Batch ID doesn't have any significance here, right?
No.
Because we are maintaining the status of the record in the staging table.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And we also want the error records to be reprocessed, right? So today, if there is 1,000 records and yesterday there was 1,000 records, and out of those 1,000 records, there are 100 records which are in error status. What we wanted is 1,000 plus that 100 records to be processed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, batch ID doesn't make any significance.
No, that's right. Okay. Okay. No, I'm good with this process. It looks good. I think we might just want to set up a conference call with our DBAs just so that they're aware that we're going to use an advanced queue and that they're okay with creating a new one.
Right. tomorrow I wanted to do that business events and all that. So
But do we need business events
yeah,
if we're just using the queue?
yeah, whatever the best option, then we can go according.
Okay. So we'll let you investigate, and tomorrow, if you can confirm whether we need to talk with our DBAs to have the queue created.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing something you mentioned that's interesting. That it's something I had totally forgotten, but I wanted to bring to this discussion. Is about how many records we keep in the staging table. Because we've seen staging tables, like we have staging tables in prod right now, which have more than million records, like 38 million records. So we just want to make sure that if it's been processed successfully, we could, I just wanted to bring some discussions about the purging process for the staging table.
I can do one thing. See, since the records, once the records are, I mean, when I'm inserting the records, it would be the new status, right? So, but so anything other than new or error records, when I'm repopulating the new records, I would ensure that processed records I'm clearing from the staging table.
Yes. I guess that's fine.
Right? Okay.
I just don't know whether at some point we want to know, okay, how many were processed versus how many failed. Let's say there's 10,000. We know that 1,000 aired out, but we don't know how many were loaded successfully. But yeah.
Okay. Right.
What we could do is, let's say we could. It's not even archiving, then purging of table. We could say that when you run the program, clear every processed record greater than, let's say, sysdate minus, I don't know, 4 days, 5 days, let's say.
Or probably like we don't need any, any processed records, right? Like all the processed records would be purged and would be kept in the archive table.
Yeah. Yeah, something, I don't know why, something inside me tells me we'd want them, but I'm trying to find a reason and I can't really find one, so.
I think we should retain them for a few days for the purpose of audit and troubleshooting.
It's more for troubleshooting, but yeah.
Yeah, I still see like, still there in the archive table, right? Like archive table, it's going to be there ever.
In the archive table?
Yeah.
But do we really need an archive table for this? I mean, if it was let's say, if it was a staging table for transactions, and this is a discussion we've been having internally a while back, and my thoughts on this were, if it's a staging table for transaction records, so let's say sales orders, quotes, in that case, you might want to retain some archiving, because if there really is an issue, let's say the customer complains about a specific order, you might want to see, okay, what happened. But if it's for master data replication, so account items and whatnot, there's really no point in archiving.
Okay.
We're just really copying data from one place to another. There's nothing for auditing, nothing. So
yeah.
We're just keeping, let's say, for process records, we could keep them for 1 week or 2.
Okay.
Let's put it 10 days, let's say. And for error records, even error records, do you want to keep them more than 30 days? I don't think. If it's failed for 30 days.
We have a bad habit of just keeping crap for keeping crap's sake.
Yeah,
we get away from that.
All right.
And we very rarely really go back and look at any of the errors. We just
No, that's it. So I wouldn't overthink this. just like as you start your process, you could go ahead and do this rule: delete every record that are processed where, let's say, the record update date or the process date is sysdate minus 10, so 10 days later. So everything that's older than 10 days, but that's successfully processed, you don't really need to keep. And everything that's error state, do you want to keep pushing them after 30 days? If it's failed for 30 days, I mean, you've had a
Yeah,
chance.
and the possibility is somebody's already gone back in and maybe updated that record, and it's gone through in the process state anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's how it's going to get fixed. Somebody's going to go into the account at some point and hammer it with a, and it will go through on the next update.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the high possibility that they may update something and then it will just re-trigger. And practically, we may not really want the error record to process, right? So,
right, because they may have overwritten it with something else, and then we get process the error record and change it back again.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that honestly, if we can do this like this for 10 days and 30 days for error records, I think that would work for me. 30 days is good enough for investigating errors. And 10 days, honestly, if there's something that happens with the process record. Process, we really won't do much about them. It's just if you need to investigate a specific batch, you might want to compare what succeeded versus what not. But really, we wouldn't really need them after that long.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was. So if you. Okay. So is there anything else that we need to discuss? I think we ironed out pretty much. I think there was one thing on the mapping sheet that I needed to clarify. The source of the contact info here.
Right.
That's all I need to clarify. This, I had a confirmation that most is not needed except for this, maybe the sales rep name. So I'm just going to remove everything but the sales rep name.
Gideon, there's also a couple of questions from my side that I sent over.
Yeah.
We have time to review it real quick.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I have, let me just find that email. There was one from today.
It wasn't from Monday. I'll just ask.
And there was the other one from Monday, yeah.
Right.
About markets.
Yeah, there's a primary account. Question if the primary account will ever have billing or shipping address or only sub accounts.
Yeah, but no, only sub accounts.
Only sub accounts, okay. And then user map to primary account will be associated with sub accounts, right?
Yes. Honestly, I'm curious to see how we'll trigger that. But if you say it's possible and it will happen, that's fine. We can discuss. Because we don't import them, they need to be assigned shortly after, if not immediately after somebody assigned the user.
Right.
So it can be either a scheduled process to run every few minutes, or it can be a trigger that will trigger this cascading. About the others, I kind of responded.
Okay.
Market and sub-account region, sub-region, store, and to some extent the sales discount bracket as well. To me, honestly, I don't know if it's feasible, but let's say we wanted to have some targeted offering saying, okay, we have a collection, but it really only matters to customers that are, or we might want to highlight it to specific customers. So for example, lab market customers or food and beverage market customers. These guys, they won't really need any welding items, but they might really be interested in our food and beverage gases and maybe some regulators. So I think it would be interesting to have it if we could target specific collections or target specific ads on the site to direct the customers to those interesting collections, but I don't know if that's something we can even trigger. I don't think it's something that was in the BRD. It's just as I went through all the fields, I was thinking, okay, this could be a good, something we could use. But I'm not even sure we're going to
Right.
have a feature to use them.
Yeah, because we can have that property at account level, right? So essentially, you can set up your audiences on the OCC based on the segments, right? So essentially, then have personalization rules, which will in fact display different content based on the segment. So
Okay.
I just wanted to confirm the values for those segments if you just set this out.
Oh, that's interesting. So we can.
Yeah, because you can have catalog display differently for those segments versus others as well.
Okay, we might need to see where that's configured. I haven't seen it. But you need a list of market segments for this to happen?
No, just understand the values. What will be the value passed from EBS to OCC, so we can kind of figure out how to store it in OCC as a property that could be used for segmentation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to see where that comes from. I know there's a sort of lookup that has this information, and also territory segment. This is the territory table. Whether we have a full list, yeah, territory table has a full list, but it also has US values, not just Canadian values. Because the territory table is not. But it's not segmented by operating unit. It's just a big table that has all the territories from all operating units. But yeah, I can send you a list of market segment, no issue.
Okay.
And you're going to configure that in OCC?
So not yet. So I guess it's
No,
based on the conversation, your conversation with Matt. I mean,
Yeah.
if you guys want to do it, but we just set up that information on the account level, so you can use that for segmentation.
Perfect. Okay. That would be wonderful. So I'll send you the list, no problem.
Okay.
The other ones are classification and account type. Honestly, these are just out-of-the-box fields for which I put in a value. Most of the time for the classification, I think it's always standard. Honestly, I didn't see any use for this unless there's out-of-the-box features that are dependent on these. Is there? Or it's more for segmentation as well.
Okay. But do we need to have on the OCC side? Would you like to be part of the import?
No, honestly, classification you always use blank standard. If I'm right to recall, it's always standard. So this classification in OCC doesn't really matter. And the account type, the only purpose that I saw is company would be the primary account, and division would be the sub-accounts.
Sub-account. Okay, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, it's honestly, I don't know what it would trigger, except maybe some filtering on the accounts when the user selects an account, just to have the divisions or account type or sub-accounts, whatever we want to filter by. But other than that, I didn't see anything.
Okay.
Sales discount bracket might be used for pricing logic, but at this point, I don't know whether we'll just pass the pricing request to EBS and EBS will handle this. So might be used or not, but it can also be used for segmentation of the customers because it's small, medium, large distributors, corporate companies, I don't know. So there's different segments. So it's a way to segment the customers as well. So this is really the market. This is the geography. And this is the kind of customer size or type.
Okay.
Warehouse is more for shipment, but as we discussed earlier, we need to decide the checkout flow, the shipping, what options we'll use, etc.
Okay, but for now, I mean, I can go ahead and create this property so that account level.
Yeah, we can put the values in the account. Honestly, at this point, it might even not be used. It will depend on the design, what comes out of the design phase, really.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, so right now I need to finalize the file format for the guys to create those files to post to the OCC.
Yeah.
So I mean, I will include that. If anything changes, before we go to production, we can change the format. I guess.
Yeah. Honestly, in the end, I mean, it wouldn't hurt just to have those fields there. So if we want to get ahead on the design of the interfaces, we might as well just include them now. And if they're not needed, well, they won't be needed. But if they're there and we can use them for segmentation or anything, well, it's going to be there.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. All right, sounds good.
Okay, maybe just one last question for you, Alex. It's about the CMS page. So we've been trying to test this one internally. And it seems that unlike the other pages, this one comes up with these errors, the URLs that are pointing to the... So maybe it was published before we changed the base URL or something like that. Because the rest of the site works fine. It's just this page specifically that doesn't. I know that Anne-Sophie has a presentation with a customer this afternoon until 3:30 p.m. EST. But after that, I mean, if we could republish that page or try to fix this, I think our Anne-Sophie would like to see that page show up.
Right. Yeah, it works for me because obviously I don't have the restriction that those files to get loaded. But yeah, I mean, we probably need to just republish it. Right?
Yeah, but we just wanted to make sure not to break anything. So if we can hold on the publishing until later today, 3:30 p.m. EST. So let's say 4:30 Central. And then if you can republish, we'll be able to look at the CMS page. And I don't know whether if you wanted to play with it or change anything, but at least we'll be able to work with it.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have anything else. That's good. So just maybe next steps. I can clear up maybe just that mapping on the contacts records. I don't know whether are you going to go ahead. So I think you're already working on the mapping file, or are you working on the technical design right now?
So from OCC side, yeah. So I started working on the mapping document to essentially create the file format that will need to be loaded to the OCC, and then mapping basically between those properties.
Okay. And how long do you think the whole process of getting this interface up and running will take?
So from OCC side, I mean, it's out of the box. I just need to finish the mapping side. So I would need to probably discuss with Fanny and the guys to review previous estimates and see if there is any changes to those. And get back to you guys.
It's more that if I'm going on vacation or anything, and we want to have well, we don't want to have your guys idle. So if you think you have for 3 or 4 weeks of work, I don't know.
No, I don't think that would take that much. But we'll definitely discuss that. But essentially, after the account and site synchronization batch process, what are the other tasks we can start reviewing?
Okay.
We pretty much need to figure out, okay, what the next steps will be after the account and sites.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the next one, an important one, is going to be the items or the catalog.
Okay.
Yeah, item sync.
We have quite a few meetings set up next week to discuss catalogs. One of the big question mark right now is whether we use, in ABS, how there is a catalog function where you can have all the attributes. So the question is whether we use let's say, master data management approach to this, and we say we maintain the data in ABS, and then we just replicate to OCC, or whether any loading will happen on the OCC side or not. So there's big discussions going on around that. Some discussions also about how we can group items, or whether we group items or not. Into a specific product with multiple SKUs, or just multiple
variations.
So there's big discussions around that. So we have a meeting scheduled to talk about pricing tomorrow.
Yep.
So we'll just go through. I mean, I think it was meant to be more internal to begin with, but it would be worthwhile for you to at least understand. Or I don't know whether you want anybody in your team as well, maybe Chandu or Fanny, somebody who, because we're going to talk about how our prices are set up in ABS.
And you guys will run for the hills when you see that.
Yeah, I did invite Fanny to join tomorrow, so I hope he'll join. I don't think we need solo team yet, right? It's essentially just a structure of the pricing on the EBS side.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'll make sure we have Fanny on that meeting.
And sorry for interrupting. Just how soon do we need to start talking about the payment processing functionality?
They were talking about it next week, right? We do have the meeting set up.
We have a meeting set up? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, great that process, yeah.
Marie sent the invite, so I don't know whether she copied you or not, but yeah, basically the thing we want, the reason I suggested to have that meeting that early is mostly because of, we want to make, well, I wanted to make sure that if there's any other interfaces that needs to be added to the scope, at this point, I don't know. Because I know that we're going to use the approach of the hosted payment page. So just to process the payment, it's kind of straightforward.
Right.
For invoices, for paying, let's start with orders. So if we check out with an order, we go to hosted payment page. Okay, the payment is processed. We can create the sales order as prepaid, and then there's no issue. So it should clear like most of the ARs because it's prepaid. So there shouldn't be any issue, and it shouldn't need another interface. It's going to be the orders creation interface that will handle that prepayment feature on the ABS side. But for invoices, again, I'm being told that there's a process for this. We just need to make sure that when we pay an invoice and we use, let's say, a payment from Moneris, there's already an interface between Moneris and EBS to clear the ARs for the customers who pay by credit card. But I just want to align. And then there was a discussion about returns and people that needs to be refunded for stuff they paid by credit card. So I'd like to know, do we want to handle that case? Is it handled outside the system? Does it require any interface or not? At this point, I don't think, but well, I just want to make sure that we're all aligned on the scope of what needs to happen at least. And then whether we need, to start working on this right away, I'm not sure, but at least we'll be aligned a bit more on the scope.
That sounds great, yeah.
Yeah, because on the, like on the order side or in the Oracle EBS side, is like I'm still not clear where we're going to be storing the token. If there's a field for that defined in Oracle EBS, or if that's...
Yeah, I think there is. And I think they already store Moneris tokens when they tokenize it.
So we just need to drag that information out because, like we're probably going to need to bring that down either in the orders or invoice interface, just in case they want to do a refund or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think refunds might be processed directly because Moneris has a portal for our admin people to process transactions. And I think that right now, the refunds might be processed manually on the portal, on the Moneris portal. And for that, you don't need a token in EBS. You just, the person or an internal admin person will just go back to the eSelect Moneris portal and find that transaction and reverse it. So we could, so that's the piece where I'm saying, okay, we don't have anything for this, but do we want something like that to happen? Does it have to be in the scope of this project? Good discussions about scope.
Yeah, so yeah, it could be further down the lines, but it's at the same time, it's like we're giving the customers the ability to, self-manage. So they could request the refund through the portal, and then obviously I'll have to go through a approval process, which you've got to approve that the goods have actually come back and stuff like that, or the services wasn't rendered or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we'll include that in the discussion. So discussion for credit card is more about validating the scope, making sure we know which transactions are part of the scope. Do we need any extra interface? Which interface is going to handle what? Because we have a few existing interface and we're creating a new one, let's say for sales orders. So just to make sure that everything's accounted for and we know where we're going.
Right.
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Right. So, okay. So if you have any questions in the meanwhile, let us know. I think we're good with accounts. So so I guess design will proceed. Do we want to follow up, to schedule a follow-up call in case any questions, or just do a status call? It might take 5 minutes if there's nothing.
I think let the guys have a look at it, and then we can schedule something quickly from there
Yeah.
if there's something comes up.
Okay. And if you want us to schedule, if we need to do that advanced queue, let us know, and we'll schedule a call with our DBAs just to make sure everybody's fine with this approach.
Yeah, we maybe just want to flag that up right now with the DBAs, just so.
Yeah, especially, I mean, from what I understood, it seems like that, I mean, both Fanny and Chendu seem to agree on that approach. So if both seems to think it's the right approach, I'm fine with that. So yeah, we could just schedule a call right away. And if in the meanwhile you realize that, okay, no, we'll just do the business event instead, we'll cancel the call. But I think at this point we're heading towards the approach of the advanced queue.
Okay.
So I'll schedule a call right away. Maybe for Friday.
Yeah, sure. Fine, works for me. What time? Yes, I think.
I'm pretty wide open all day Friday.
Yeah, my Friday looks a bit like this.
Chandu, Funny, Hitesh.
Free
Yeah,
till
that's okay. Friday should be okay for us. Afternoon will be preferred.
Anytime, so it could be like 10 a.m.
Sure. Central.
or Etienne talks Eastern time. I talk Mountain time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern. Yeah, let's do that.
10 a.m. Eastern makes it 9 for you. That's good. Okay. And our DBA should be maybe 9:30. It should be a long call, so maybe 9:30. 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. So then we'll touch base on Friday, and we'll follow up with any other questions we come up with.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
guys.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
You bet. You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.